Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go!
And let's go. It is Ballsy Uncut for another week. You might hear my dog barking upstairs, going wild over the golfers on the golf course. Those days are fading fast here, and that's sad to say. But hopefully we got still a month or so of good weather. Wherever you're watching or listening to this, however you're consuming this, either live or later in podcast form, I do appreciate it. Tell all your friends. Ballsy Uncut brought to you by District Brewing in the heart of Regina. Their Super Squeeze Seltzer, Mango Lime, Passion Fruit Lime. Also by AGT Foods Canada. Thanks to Murad El-Khatib and his gang for getting on board. His brother Omar for supporting the community, supporting this podcast. Also want to give a shout out to Paul Waldo, Royal LePage in Regina, getting a real estate game with the three-time Grey Cup champ, 306-502-5355. And also, Michael Barth and the gang at Ward Tire Craft, 101 Dudney Avenue in Regina. They also have a location in Saskatoon. Go into either location, say Ballsy sent you, and you'll get a discount. 10% off on tires and braking needs. And they got a great payment plan as well. Just once again, I'm doing my own thing here, so I just want to make sure we're all set up here so everybody can follow along at home. You can always weigh in on any comments you want to make here on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube at Ballsy Uncut. And I'm just going to send that out there, and away we go. All right. So welcome to the show. It was a decent weekend of football, and we still have two games tonight. Monday Night Football. It's the Cincinnati Bengals and the Washington Commanders in Cincinnati. In the early game, about 45 minutes earlier, we will see the Jacksonville Jags going up against the Buffalo Bills. I got the Jags covering on the road, 5.5 points, and I think it could be like a 10-point game in Cincinnati with the Bengals. They got the receivers back, Jamar Chase, and of course, T. Higgins. Joe Burrow's healthy. They're 0-2. When you're 0-2, you're desperate. So you can expect the Jags to play hard, and you can expect the Bengals to play hard to try to avoid that 0-3 start. That's almost impossible to come back from. CFL, I went 1-3 in my picks for the week. The only one I got right was Montreal beating Ottawa, the Riders' next opponents. I did pick Calgary to win, so you're welcome, Rider Nation. I picked against the Riders for the first time in 5 weeks, and the Stamps win. I also got Winnipeg beating Edmonton. Elks turned the football over. They did everything to throw that game away and ended up losing 27-10. Brady Oliveira, inexplicably this late in the season, scored his first 2 touchdowns of the year for Winnipeg. They are heating up. And I don't have a dog in any of the fights. I don't really care who wins the Grey Cup this year, but it's looking a lot like a Grey Cup rematch right now, Winnipeg and Montreal. I hate to say it, but that's just the way that it looks like right now. And if it is, Winnipeg in this era of free agency, 5 straight Grey Cup appearances would be crazy, but tell me I'm wrong. And then the other game I got wrong was the Toronto Argonauts losing to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I'll tell you this right now, laugh if you want. I'll ask my guest today, James Ellingson, the former rider and Ottawa Red Black broadcaster, and Jon Ryan as well. Bo Levi Mitchell's on a team that's won 5 games, but Bo Levi Mitchell leads in all the passing categories, 4,400 yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and the dude just was 31 of 40 for 362 yards and a touchdown in another win. And he could be the MOP of the league. If his team could have played any defense and his receivers could have caught the ball earlier in the year, Bo Levi Mitchell would be the runaway MOP. Now, he might not get there because his team might not make the playoffs, but they could. And if they do, look out. You never know in today's wacky CFL. Even the Riders, who finally ended a 7-game slide, have an opportunity to climb to 500, and I think it's a very winnable game against the Ottawa Redblacks. They're going to beat Calgary again because Calgary's miserable this year. They beat Ottawa. They're pretty well in the playoffs at 8-9-1. Because then Edmonton right now, losing that game, is going to have to run the table, including a game in Winnipeg to get to the playoffs. So pretty good bet the Rough Riders are going to make the playoffs. We'll get into our CFL simulations in a minute, or in a few minutes, from Keith Willoughby, the dean at the Edwards School of Business, and our dean. He sent me some interesting facts. So my power rankings: Montreal 1, Winnipeg 2, Hamilton 3. I got Ottawa 4, Edmonton 5, TO 6, BC 7, even though they're in second place. They're behind Edmonton in the power rankings because they haven't been playing consistent football. BC 7, Saskatchewan 8, and Calgary 9. Yeah, I know the Riders won, but they beat Calgary. Calgary is not a great football team this year. They're done. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason, if they let Dickinson still do all three jobs: head coach, OC, general manager. Way too much on his plate. I think he's a good football coach. He's a smart football mind. He just doesn't have the quarterbacking right now. I don't know that the O-line's been spectacular this year. They have some holes to fill on that football team. I just don't think he can do 3 full-time jobs. So the Riders won, and that's good. And they showed some guts. And we've already talked about this. I had the Rider recap show on Saturday. But I don't know. I need to see a little more from the Riders before they can go back up the power rankings. Winnipeg, been very solid, even though they're still battling some injuries. Montreal still staying at the top. And Hamilton, you got to give Hamilton credit. These power rankings aren't necessarily record-based. They're based on how you've been doing lately, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats have been rolling lately. I want to give a shout out to the family of Albert Wolbaum, passing away. He's a longtime umpire in baseball, Saskatchewan. So I want to remember Albert and everything he's done in the sporting world. So our condolences out to Albert Wolbaum's family. The game of the weekend had nothing to do with the NFL and the CFL. Probably, that Colorado Buffalo Baylor Bears game was great. Buffalo's eked one out in overtime thanks to that stud kid that goes both ways. His name's slipping my mind right now, but that guy goes both ways, receiver and defensive back. Forced a fumble in overtime, and they won the game, but it got them to overtime with a big long catch, Hail Mary catch. So Buffalo's there, but in Canada, it was the Manitoba Bisons and the Calgary Dinos. Dinos have lost all their games, and heartbreaking. They deserve to win all of their games, and I'm not saying that because my kid's on the team. They should be 4-0, but they're 1-3 and face a must-win this week against UBC. UBC smacked the U of S 38-17, so they're 2-2. They always start slow and always pick up steam, and here they come again. The Rams started 2-0 and have lost in back-to-back weeks to UBC, and then went to Alberta and got smoked 30-6. So they're 2-2, and Alberta's 2-2. Saskatchewan and UFC are 1-3, but Saskatchewan beat UFC in double overtime when UFC had the lead. So this game comes down to the last draw. It's a kickoff. The Calgary player mistakenly fields a ball that's going to go out of bounds with about $1:30 to go on a kickoff after Manitoba scores a touchdown, and it goes out of bounds, or he steps out of bounds. His momentum carries him out at the 5-yard line. So he's out of bounds at the 5-yard line, 1:30 to go. They move the ball down to about the 17-yard line for one more play with 4 seconds left. Dom Britton, the quarterback, slide steps to his left and throws a corner route to the sideline, like to the back pylon. And one of the receivers, Gutek, goes up to make the catch. Now he goes up, high points the ball, and kind of bobbles the ball. He kind of bobbles it. But as he's touching down, he gets control and gets the 1 foot in. The refs say no catch. They don't confer with each other, put the flag in the air to signal end of the game, and run off the field. Run off the field. Listen, I've been a guy on this show that said, you know what? If you can't get replay right, just get rid of instant replay. So if they got rid of it right across sports, I actually wouldn't be that upset with it. But they're not going to do that, okay? They're going to continue to have instant replay. So why don't I have instant replay in youth sports? My kid played NCAA football. They had instant replay. They had a few more cameras, but not that many more cameras, not on the FCS level. And they certainly didn't have drone cameras like they did at McMahon Stadium. And on the last angle, the reverse angle, you could see his foot come down and he catches the ball. It was a touchdown. In an 8-game season, to rip kids off like that is embarrassing. It's embarrassing on U Sports. So we don't have instant replay when we could have instant replay, at least for turnovers and touchdowns. You can have it for at least that in U Sports. So we don't do that. And we leave the microphones on in the quarterback's helmet for the entire play. Folks, this is why when my kid was first coming out, I was very hesitant about him going to U Sports and why ultimately I sent him to the NCAA. Why I encouraged him to go there. Because, well, 2 reasons. Number one, coaches say, hey, that's the higher level of football. So if that's on your resume, good for the kid. Also, the coaches and the players on the respective teams in U Sports, but I'll just talk Can West, they, by and large, sink their heart and soul to this. They treat it like it's pros. Like they treat it like it should be, with reverence, and they're working hard and all that stuff. Nutrition, workouts, all that stuff, okay? It's the administration at these schools that don't really care about the sports. They don't. The universities would rather concentrating on the fees for international students to come in. And I got nothing against international students, but they'd rather worry about international students coming in instead of worried about their kids here playing the sports. Playing sport, like I know sports isn't be all and end all, but it's a big component. You don't think football puts these universities on the map? You're damn right. No other sport does it. Football puts the universities on the map to a lesser extent than NCAA, of course. But so we are going to cheap out when it comes to that. And that's why, if they barely treat it better than intramural, that's why I was hesitant in having my kid come back. The only reason my kid came back is he's hoping to maybe get a chance at playing the CFL, and he wanted to get reacclimatized with the Canadian game and get more snaps on the field. Okay. So that's why he came here. They rotated too many safeties there defensively, situationally at the UND. Had nothing against the program. Had loved his time there, but he wanted more snaps, which is what he was getting here at the UFC before he tweaked the knee and will be out until after the bye. But that's why I sent him there, not here, because of stuff like this. It's a touchdown. We could have basic instant replay, but we don't. Now we put microphones in people's helmet, but we let the coaches talk the quarterbacks through the play. Just crazy, man. Absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe nobody else is talking about that angle. But anyway, that was kind of my weekend, watching sports, going to an event for the Orange Buffalo facility they're trying to build in North Central Regina. They raised $1.6 million that night. I watched the Rider game on my phone, then came back and did the Our Balls Are Bigger post-game show, which is available in podcast form, or you can just scroll down at Ballsy Uncut on X, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can find it later. Just scroll down the timeline. Okay, we got NFL football on tap, and with that in mind, we're going to take a break, and we're going to get to Jon Ryan. We'll hear from Jon Ryan a little later on, CFL Simulations. What does our computer think about the Riders' prospects? Playoffs, home playoffs, and the journey to the Grey Cup. If you want to weigh in on how you feel about the Rough Riders after that winner against Calgary, are you excited? Are you feeling like this team's going to get on a roll? How do you think things are shaking out? By the way, NHL coming up here. Seeing all the stuff in my timeline about Amazon Prime now in the NHL. They got that not Netflix, but the Prime series where they're following McDavid, Draisaitl, a bunch of NHL stars around. And they got their Prime hockey coverage on Mondays, and Thursdays they're doing like a red zone type of thing too. Now they got way more teams in the CFL, but got the NFL, you got the CFL, you got Drive to Survive, you got golf, and the CFL still behind the times. And I hate to say it, love the league, man, but like, we're not even at the cement mixing stage for the house when it comes to promoting and social media and stuff. They're doing a better job this year, but they're so far behind. I had a guy call me when I was my first year with the Riders asking how he can get audio because they were doing a big behind the scenes, like kind of documentary like that. And nothing ever came of it. They never, it's coming. It never happened. Thank God the Andrew Harris running back Resilient came out, and that was a great feature, but we need more of that. So looking forward to seeing what the NHL has on tap. Get with it, CFL. Get with it. Come on. All right, we call this Kicking It with Jon Ryan, former NFL and CFL punter, Super Bowl winning punter, and baseball owner that hasn't won just once, but now twice. Look at this. I put this on my shelf a couple of weeks ago, and now we're champions. It's just dripping with championship here in my studio. Just talk about that. You got 2 championships now, bro.
Yeah, this one was pretty special. I mean, we've only owned the team for 2 years, and we're the high A affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians, so we kind of got to suit the table, if you will, and being only 2 steps away from the majors, and we're actually partners with Paul Dolan, who owns the Guardians. He owns 25% of this team too. So it's just kind of special. You see these guys that play for you, and then you see them go up through Double A and Triple A, and hopefully eventually in the majors. And to win this championship means a lot. Like these guys grind it. They're taking buses. They're living in little apartments. They're not making much money. 132 games a year. I mean, these guys are working their butt off. So it's really special to see them achieve this.
So what would a guy make, playing for your team? Like what in that level of ball, not just your team, but in that level of ball?
They make about $30,000 a year. And that's, I think in the off season, they get like $250 a week. And during the season, I forget what the actual number is. And that number is actually more than doubled in the last 5 years. There was players that used to make $8,000 or $9,000 a year playing, doing 2 steps away from the majors, making $8,000 or $9,000 a year. So it's pretty crazy, but it's a little bit more of a livable wage now, but it's still not a lot of money.
So do they get a playoff bonus? Like, like you win, you get a playoff bonus. Is there that structure in there?
Yeah, they get a little extra from the club. The good thing is in the minor leagues, because all the players are brought to us from the Guardians. We have no input on field talent. We just handle the business side of it. So they also pay their wages, which is nice. So we don't have to worry about that. So that all comes from the big club.
That's good. So how much do they say in what you can do on the business side of things? The
business side, we have a little bit more rules just based on being affiliated with the MLB. They have some rules for us, but other than that, we just we have full reign to kind of hire who we want and kind of totally handle 100% of the business side, and they take care of the on-field talent.
These aren't your Jon Ryan, Michael Ball, mom and dad Calgary Stampeders. They're not a very good football team right now. They won't make the playoffs. Riders ran all over them. So I temper my excitement if I'm a Rider fan with who you beat, but you can only play who's on the field. But I want to ask you this. Raquel Armstead comes in on 3 days of practice, runs for over 200 yards. Just talk about what kind of street cred that would give him in the locker room coming in.
Oh, huge. I mean, that's impressive. I literally, because I didn't get the chance to watch the game, and I looked at the stat page, and I go, who the hell is this? This guy was not on my radar. And he comes in and runs for 207. I mean, the Riders rush for, over 250 yards? It just, as you said, not our Calgary Stampeders that we're used to seeing, but definitely gives him a lot of cred right off the bat in that locker room to do that for the boys. He'll be a locker room favorite right off the bat.
So this show's called Ballsy Uncut, so whether I'm your friend or not, I call it like I see it, and I think Trevor Harris can win a championship with a running game like this. Like, if you expect Trevor to win a championship on his own back for 3 or 4 games, it's not happening. He's not that dynamic, so that's just me calling it like I see it. But if you can run the football, not 200 yards every game, but 100, 120, you have a chance to have a balanced attack, and I think you can win a championship with Trevor Harris that way.
You definitely need a more balanced attack than we've seen earlier in the year. And, as you said, we're not going to have 207 every game. It would be nice, but we talk about this every year. They've talked about this since the first day of CFL football. When you get into October, when you get into November, you got to be able to run the rock. That's what it all comes down to. When you're playing in Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, come late October, November, you have to be able to put the ball on the ground and run it. You can't rely on an aerial attack all the time. And so this is a good sign.
Yeah, so in past years, you'd have 1 or 2 or 3 stud CFL teams. This year, it's all a bunch in a blender, okay? Montreal's got a great record, but I don't think they're dominant. The Riders could have had them twice earlier this year and didn't seal the deal there in those games. So the same thing goes for when you're picking MOP. I'm going to throw one out here. I asked Ryan Hall this. He said, well, I think they'd have to go on a bit of a run for him to be considered. But they were going to bench Bo Levi Mitchell's ass. And all he's done now is help them win 3 games. He missed 31 of 40, 362 and a touchdown. Take that, Scott Milanovic, is what Bo Levi Mitchell's saying. Like, honestly, if they can get to the playoffs, I think this dude should get serious consideration for MOP. And that's crazy. He was going to be benched.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that he's the MVP. But when you start looking through it, you always go to the quarterbacks first. BC's had 2 quarterbacks. Saskatchewan's had 2 quarterbacks. Edmonton's had 2 quarterbacks. Calgary's, in last place. Cody Fajardo hasn't played all season. He's been in and out to the lineup. It's like, who do you go for the MOP right now? Like, when you said that, I hadn't thought about it before, but no name just popped up on the top of my head right away. Like most years, someone does. There's Zach Collaros has not been Zach Collaros this year. It'll be interesting to see. And because of that, a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell has a shot.
Well, laugh if you want, and I'm not saying you don't know what you're talking about, otherwise I wouldn't have you on this thing. But look, listen, at one point I was going to pick Beverette from Montreal out of the East because he was like up there in the defensive plays and special teams. And in the West, it was going to be Roland Milligan. So it's like, and Bo Levi Mitchell, it's not his fault the secondary is Swiss cheese. Like, you did a call-in show with me after the Hamilton game, and we both said that's the worst we've ever seen defensive backs play. That's not Bo Levi Mitchell's fault. I know he throws interceptions, but he's got 24 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. He's throwing for 4,400 yards. Like, dude is having a decent year. It's not his fault. Your team sucks around him.
I agree with that. You take what you give, what you're given, and that's what he's doing. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get to a pick 6. I like to say we'll mix a little, mostly NFL, but one of it has to do with something I saw in the CFL and NFL. So number 1. Coaching jobs. Best coaching job so far in the NFL. I think you'd agree. Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores in Minnesota, and Matt LaFleur with Malik Willis in Green Bay. Let's be honest. When Jordan Love went down, we thought Green Bay, at least I did, was going to pull a Miami like they did yesterday and get smoked with basically lifeless on offense. And they haven't. They have not. So that's the 2 best coaching jobs, I think, so far. And they meet this week coming up.
Yeah, I mean, to see Minnesota rolled over Houston yesterday as well, 34-7.
Yeah.
No one in the world would have been talking about Sam Darnold, potential MVP of the league after 3 weeks, and I think he might be.
Yeah.
I mean, he's putting on. Yeah, I would have said Derek Carr, but Derek Carr didn't have a great performance yesterday. But the coaching job that they've done there has been impressive. It's there's no doubt about it. I didn't think we'd be talking to the 3-0 Minnesota Vikings. Once again, this is the biggest shock to me so far in the league. And with Jordan Love out, and I think Jordan Love will be coming back. I believe I'd be shocked if he wasn't playing next Sunday. But to do it with the backup and play really well has been impressive.
Well, and I feel happy for Brian Flores. Everybody was on him because Tua said he's a horrible person and all this stuff. And in today's day and age, we hear one narrative, but not the other side. There's never 2 sides to the story. And I hate that about today's world. And I don't know Brian Flores from a hole in the ground, but he's kind of kept his mouth shut and coached over there and done a good job, which I like.
Yeah, in situations like that in sport, it's often the classier guy is the guy you don't hear from. I don't know if he's a complete jerk or not, but just to kind of take that and kind of not give it back, I think it's kind of classy move, anyways. But he's been kind of dragged through the mud by a few guys, I think.
Hey, and with LaFleur, he looks like, I know Aaron Rodgers. I like Aaron Rodgers. You like Aaron Rodgers, but he feels like he's actually free as a head coach now to make decisions, especially on offense, right?
Oh, for sure. He was the coach, but Aaron Rodgers was in his ear 24/7. And if a play or a scheme or something Aaron didn't like, he wasn't going to run it. And Aaron has that power playing 20 plus years in the NFL, being multiple MVP, but it takes away from what a coach can do sometimes, especially a younger coach like he is. So it must feel kind of good to kind of be able to really just be able to call his own shots now and not have be under Aaron Rodgers' thumb.
I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about this because they're so good. They draft well, they develop well. Like that Rashee Rice looks like he's going to be a number one receiver. They're very fast on defense, and I like how they build their team. You got to go cheaper on defense because it's more collision based. There's going to be more injuries there. They're cheap. They move off a Snead. They replace him at corner. They're cheaper. They're faster. So and they're well coached. So I don't know who's going to knock the Chiefs off. But last night, the Atlanta Falcons, I want to talk coaching here. This is point 2. The Atlanta Falcons have it 4th and inches. If there's one thing you can't do with the Chiefs, it's run east and west. Go forward. You got a 6'2", 230-pound quarterback in Kirk Cousins. We talk in this world of analytics. You just go forward. So you got that, John, okay? Then you got the Rider game. Brett Lothar with 1 second to go at the end of the half. It didn't have a big factor in the game like the Falcons one, but he pooches the ball up. It goes to the sidelines, and fortunately it stays in bounds. But if it goes out of bounds, they get it up at the 45-yard line. They get a chance at a Hail Mary at the end of the half. If there's 1 second to go, why don't you dribble it down the middle, and that's it? So my question is, what happens on the sidelines? Like, I know it's easy to sit on a couch and say they should have done that. But these guys are getting paid money to be coaches, and in the NFL, millions. How do you fuck up those decisions?
Yeah, well, I can speak from experience. A lot of times in the CFL or NFL on special teams, a lot of times the special teams coach will have what he wants to do, and usually in that situation, you dribble it down the middle. You don't get cute with anything, and usually a head coach comes over and goes, "Let's do this," even though he wasn't in the room all week. But the head coach be, "Let's just pop it up. I don't want to take any chance. Pop it up." It's like, okay, we didn't practice that, but I guess that's what we're doing now, and it's a BS. I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened there, but in my experience, that's happened many times where the head coach comes down and goes, "I want this." And it's like, well, we don't have that, coach. Like, we didn't practice that all week. Like, I know you'd like to do it, but and lots of times I'm not saying that's what happened with Mace, but and then I watched that play with the Falcons yesterday. I go, what the hell are you doing? Trying to why are you trying to run in the B and the C gap on 4th and inches? Like, the Philadelphia Eagles have made a blueprint of how to do a 4th and inches. Why every freaking team isn't just copying them is beyond me. Yes, we have a blueprint. It works 90% of the time. Why don't we all just freaking copy that, load up behind them, push them for a first down? Let's just do that. Can't we all just agree to, who cares? Call me a copycat. You're going to call me a winning copycat.
That's good. I like that, John. Okay, speaking of coaches, you said last week your buddies last time we had you on, your buddies with Canales of the Carolina Panthers. That was one of the games I picked. I thought, okay, the Red Rifles coming in. Usually, I know you're a redhead, so you love it too. The Red Rifles coming in. He's an older guy. When older guys get in, they only have a couple of chances to strike. Okay, I can still do it. Yep. So that's why I picked them to come up with a win, and I thought the Raiders would be riding too high after upsetting the Baltimore Ravens. So where I'm going with this is people are saying, oh, that was the owner that forced the move and forced Dalton in there. To me, the owner wanted Bryce Young drafted. And if you looked at the tape, the owner would have been the owner that would have to go because the tape was so bad and say to your buddy, hey, you got to keep playing Young. So I don't think Tepper had anything to do with this. I think it was just Canales saying, I got to make a big boy decision here. And it looks like he made the right decision.
I think if the owner had anything to do with it, he would be pressing Bryce Young to stay in there.
Yeah.
Dave Canales and Dan Morgan, the GM, who I know both very well, they're in a situation where they just inherited this guy. They have no allegiance to him. They're not going to ride. They haven't hitched their trailer to him. They just need to win. And if you watch the first 2 weeks, they couldn't win. They couldn't even be competitive with Bryce Young in the lineup. So I think the owner's kind of the opposite. I think the owner would be pushing to keep him in there because it was his guy that he wanted to have drafted. And I think Dan Morgan and Dave Canales have come in and been like, we have to win or our jobs are on the line and this guy's not going to win. So we're doing whatever we can to win. I don't care if he was a first round draft pick. And going forward, and I picked them to win too this week. Going forward now, there's no path for Bryce Young to come back and be the starting quarterback for Carolina Panthers. There's ever again.
Yeah. Hey, it looks like
he'll never be the starting quarterback ever again for the Carolina. There's just no path back. He's going to get traded mid-season, late, early off-season, but there's no path for him to be the quarterback ever again for the Carolina Panthers now that you've gone down this road.
Is he a bigger bust than Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell?
Too early to tell, but it's about as bad as it gets right now. And the thing is, I don't totally blame him. It's been 18 games, 19 games, I guess, whatever it was. He's had 3 different coaches. You got a 21-year-old quarterback coming in there, fresh out of college, and you have 3 different coaches. I mean, it completely stunts his development. It gives him no chance to win. And now you have these new coaches in being like, "Oh, you're not going to win, so skedaddle." It could be one of the biggest busts of all time, but it's too early to tell. You know, we said that about Baker Mayfield. He could have been the biggest bust ever, and then he's turned it around. Sam Darnold's turned it around. All these guys, Geno Smith's turned it around. So it took him 9 years to turn it around.
Yeah.
So I don't want to call him a bust yet, but it's not looking good.
Okay, so the Dallas Cowboys are a poorly run team on the field, in my opinion. Okay, you wait till the very last second to sign your best offensive weapon, CeeDee Lamb. Then you wait to the very last second to sign Dak Prescott. You don't do anything in free agency, and like I said, you drag your feet, and you missed out on signing Derrick Henry, who came in and absolutely kicked your ass yesterday. Oh, and by the way, Dan Quinn left at the right time because Mike Zimmer has his hands full with that pitiful defense right now.
As long as Jerry Jones is on this side of the earth, they're not going to win. They're not going to be winning. They're not going to win a Super Bowl. He runs that whole entire organization with an iron fist. He goes out and signs guys. He's the GM. He runs the whole thing. He's in McCarthy's ear. He runs the whole thing. And as long as he's still around, because he's going to run that team until the last day of his life, as long as he's around, they're not going to be a championship team. You know, as all the things that you just listed, all these things that he's playing games like he plays games in the boardroom with these business guys on his oil stuff. It's not the same business. And he's trying to play it like the same business, and he has been for years. And he no longer has Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Irvin. You know, it's just a different time, and he can't compete.
What's one thing you've learned being a business guy on that side of sports? What's one thing that's really you didn't really maybe know that's kind of opened your eyes?
Oh man, it's just how fragile the players are. You know, you gotta handle them with they all have egos, and you know, I think that in the locker room you see that. You don't realize on the other side you really have to be careful with that as owners, because guys won't play for you if they don't trust you and if they feel slighted by you. And I think that, you know, we have the benefit of not having to negotiate these big contracts in minor league baseball. You know, you're playing for meal money, and I know in the NFL, you know, when you're dealing with these guys' egos and you guys feel disrespected, you know, not only just by not getting paid, you know, you pay a guy what he's worth, but sometimes the way you go about it, you sign your star quarterback 30 minutes before opening kickoff on week 1. You wait for CeeDee Lamb to have to hold out. You miss out on Derrick Henry. You bring back Ezekiel Elliott. You do all these things. And I mean, it's hard to feel disrespected when a guy gives you $60 million a year, but I don't think it's the right way to go about business.
Yeah, and I wonder if Mike Brown's feeling that now. No deal for Jamar Chase, no deal for T. Higgins. They're going to play tonight. We'll get to that as the last thing your picks, but I think you're onto something there, right?
I think so. It's just, you know, players, as I said, they're fragile. They just want to be respected.
Yeah.
And the way sometimes that Jerry Jones goes about it, I'm not sure. Even when they get the deal done, it kind of leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth, I think.
Yeah, number 5 in the pick 6 with Jon Ryan here, kicking it with Jon Ryan. I know he's won a Super Bowl, so you know, that's a huge win. That's the biggest win you can have in pro football. But it may have been the best regular season win for Sean McVay as coach of the LA Rams. And it cost me on my Sports Select to earn my ticket on betting online, you son of a gun. They were down 11, what was it, 2 scores or something with 11 minutes left, and came back and won the game with nobody. Their old line's hurt. They don't have Puka Nacua. They don't have Cooper Kupp. They got nobody. Yeah. Matthew Stafford's thrown to the popcorn vendor, and they still win the game over the 49ers.
You know, when Sean McVay took that job, I think he was like 13 years old when he took the head coaching job. I mean, I don't know if the guy had pubes yet. And when he took that job, I couldn't believe it. And right now, over the last however long, he's been there for a while now, 8 or 9 years now. The time's kind of flown by. I don't even know if he's 40 years old yet.
Oh, he's not.
He's not. He might be, in my opinion, the best overall coach in the NFL. He gets the most out of his guys. Guys obviously play for him. When you watch that game yesterday, it's coaching. You know, it's hard to outcoach a Harbaugh, but I think he outcoached them. You know, because you look at the weapons they have on the other side of the field. I thought the 49ers were going to win by 14.
Yeah,
I think this was going to be a close game.
Yeah,
with all pieces that the Rams are missing right now. And I give a lot of that to Sean McVay.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, on the pick six, let's talk about managing players. You got Tua Tagovailoa, who's on the injured reserve, and he looks like he says he's not going to retire. But every time he gets a hit on his head, he's got like crumpled hands, and it's scary. And then you got Justin Herbert, who 2 years ago came back from a high ankle sprain too early, and they got smoked by Jacksonville and could never recover. I thought they really would have sat him before the Steelers game here because they got a big one this week coming up against the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? You know, you try to win on the road, but you're probably not going to win in Pittsburgh. And there's, as you know, in a football season, there's a couple of games, even though you want to win every game, you're like, okay, we know we're probably not going to win this game. And you got a quarterback that's banged up. Like, let's talk about managing players. There's got to be somebody in these organizations that got the big boy pants on and said, listen, you're not playing. I know it's different between Herbert and Tua, but it's like, no, you're not playing. We got to look at the big picture here. But what happens in an organization like that? Because I thought Harbaugh would be the guy to say, no, Justin, you're not playing. But it's the same shit, different pile with that team.
I think a lot of times head coaches have so much going on, they just rely on the trainer to give them the trainer and the team doctor to give them a fair assessment pregame. I mean, they was right up until 5 minutes before inactives were, before we knew if he was going to play or not. Both of those guys yesterday. And so I was sitting there kind of being like, well, it's week 3. Why would they play him? And then at the same time, the devil on my shoulders, well, when you look back in week 18 and you're one game out of the playoffs, you don't know if it was week 3 or week 4 or week 5 that you needed to win. You don't know that. But at the same time, you need that guy 100% healthy coming down the stretch. You just do, no matter how you cut it. And so, I haven't heard today about how he's doing after he went down again with the same injury, correct?
Yeah.
So I was surprised they played him. I looked in pregame warm-up when I was watching. Jordan Love looked like he was ready to go. He was rolling out of the pocket. He was good, and they were kind of like, no, we're going to wait till next week. We're going to get by this week with Willis and see what happens. And it worked out pretty well for them. And now they're going into next week with a healthy, what we assume will be a healthy Jordan Love. Yeah,
no, for sure. Do you think Tua should retire?
Yes, I do. Head injuries are scary, scary things. You and I could both get hit on the head with a hammer right now, and it's a different injury. You and I could both break our ankle right now, and the doctor will say 5 to 6 weeks for both of us. We hit our head right now, and it could take you a year. It could take me 5 days. Every head injury is different, and when you look at the severity of his head injuries, of his crinkling his hands, on like convulsing on the field, now we've seen it 3 times, and I think under 12 months now. Man, I mean, you got your money. It's hard to walk away from a game you love this much. The mid-20s, it's almost impossible as we're seeing. But man, your health is number one.
Is there pressure on these guys to play?
I think we're starting to learn more about head injuries, and I don't think we're putting as much pressure on them to play. I think we're learning about that, but I think most of the pressure comes from themselves. A guy that just it was guy number one in every situation he's been in his whole life. Now sitting in the training room every day and watching someone else be number one, it's hard on your brain. It's hard on a guy's confidence. It's hard. He's been number one guy since he was 8 years old. I can guarantee it. And now to sit back and watch someone else take that, it's tough.
Okay, before I get to your picks here, and thanks for giving me your time today, I got to ask you this. I asked Ryan Hall this on my Our Balls Are Bigger postgame show, but he's never been in a pro locker room, and I haven't either. Okay, Roland Milligan is the best player on your team. Okay.
Yep.
His wife had the 4th baby 2 days before the Rider game. Your secondary isn't great. You're the best player on your team, and it's a must win, but you don't play. How does that play in the locker room? That's just a question. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to judge him. I don't know what I would do because that's a life event versus football, which is fleeting. But locker rooms. I don't. How would that play in the locker room?
Well, here's my thing, Ballsy, is you've never been in a pro football locker room the way I have, and I've never had a kid. So it's hard for me to sit here and be like, well, what are you doing? Like, come on, man, football's first. Well, no, your little kid is first right now. So that's where I would stand. I'd be like, I haven't been on that side of it. So I don't know that side of it. I think there would be, a little rumblings here and there, questioning it, but at the same time, he's probably one of their leaders. He's probably one of the guys they all love, and they stand behind him probably no matter what. So it's something that's hard to argue. But I think underneath there's probably be some rumblings.
Well, and I asked my son that very question. If you're fast forward to next year, if you're fortunate enough to be in the CFL locker room and you're playing with a guy like Roland Milligan, what would you say? He said, you know what? That dude is our best player on defense. That dude flies around. That dude goes out and he goes and covers kicks and then goes and plays defense the next play. That dude can take as many days off as he wants.
Yeah.
I don't care. That's what my son said he would say.
Yeah, but yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the overall sentiment of the team as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the question I had. Okay, 2 Monday Night Football games. Do you like this?
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like 2 Monday Night games.
I love it if they go back to back. I don't love them both being played at the same time. I think they stagger them like 45 minutes. I would love to see like a 4 o'clock and a 7 o'clock. I can get on board with that.
They used to do that. They used to do that. Back, like a few years ago, they'd have whoever in the East, and then it was always the Chargers and the Raiders, the late Monday game, remember?
Yeah.
Like Rivers and the black hole there.
So more football, the better, in my opinion. In any case, so if I can watch football, 5 days a week and 2 games every time, it's better. But I just don't like it being on at the same time.
Okay, so we got 2 games. Let's go with Jacksonville and Buffalo. I don't think Jacksonville wins, but I think the heat's on there. And when you go 0-3, you're desperate. I think they can cover the 5.5 points. I got the 5.5.
I was going to agree with you there. I think Buffalo wins, but they don't cover. I see them winning like by 3 points, a late field goal by Bass, something like that. But I don't. Even though it is in Buffalo and they play a lot better in Buffalo, I see them winning but not covering. Agreed with you.
And Jaden Daniels, talk about young quarterbacks. He looks like he has something going there. But the Washington Commanders secondary is not very good. We got Jamar Chase, who took a bad penalty against the Chiefs. We got T. Higgins back. They're on home turf. I think this has potential to be a blowout. Whatever the spread is, I think the Bengals cover this one.
Yeah, I hate agreeing with you like this, Ballsy, but I think there's going to be kind of a breakout game for the 2024 campaign for the Bengals. I think they can win by 21. They're going to be at home, 0-2 start. There's no way they're starting 0-3. They're playing against a pretty average Commanders team. Average might be a compliment. So I see the Bengals running away with this one.
So, and lastly, man, I was trying to put my finger on this, and I don't know how to quite explain it, but we're both advocates of the CFL, even though you played in the NFL. It's the best game on the planet. 3-down game is the best game on the planet. I will argue that till my grave. Okay, when I watch, whether it's U Sports, whether I watch, the CFL, but when I watch the NFL, it just feels like you can't miss. It's not the most there are a lot of boring plays, but the production, the way they put an effort into the broadcast, the fans there, it just feels like you gotta watch it or you're gonna miss something, right?
It feels like you're watching an event. It's just like you don't want to go miss a screen. I watch the first games down at the bar on my corner down here every Sunday, and they have every single game going on every screen. And your head's just on a swivel the whole. You feel like you have, FOMO, as the kids say. You feel like you're going to miss out if you miss anything, and you don't have that same feeling in a CFL game. And I don't know if it's production. I don't know if they just built it up to be such an event. Sometimes you watch a CFL game, you see 12,000 fans there, you see 30,000 empty seats. There's dead air between plays. There's stuff like that, and you're just like, this isn't grabbing me like an NFL game where it just feels like there's just fireworks all the time. Something's going on, and you can't look away.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And it's just that feeling, right? And I can't even describe it, but it's just a feeling that you have when you're watching it.
Yeah, NFL does such a good job. I've been to the first game of the year in Seattle. I'm going back there in a couple of weeks for the Sunday and the Thursday night game. And just walking from the hotel and the mile that it takes to get to the stadium, by the time you're in the stadium, you're like, put pads on me. We have 50,000 fans that can play right now because you're walking down there. There's music and the bars are all full and people are just going crazy. It's just such a great festive environment that by the time you get to the stadium, you're just like, let's go. This is amazing.
Well, as much as I say I love the CFL, I like football in general, as you know. And here's the thing: like yesterday. So in the fall, I go to church. In the fall, our mass times change, okay, at Holy Child here in Regina. And I go to the 9 o'clock because I don't want to go to 11 o'clock because I don't want to miss any games. I know that's terrible, but listen, it's a religion. I want to watch it.
Hey, they started Saturday Night Mass in Green Bay about 70 years ago, so you wouldn't have to miss the Packer game on Sunday morning.
I always loved altar serving for Father Balser because he was a Rider fan, and so this would have been the 80s, and even when they were shitty, he said, hey, 1 o'clock kick. It was a Sunday 1 o'clock kickoff. He goes, there's no homily today, so you'd go from first reading, second reading, gospel, no sermon, which could take 15 minutes because he wanted to be out. I love that. I love Rider game.
Love that.
Man.
Love
Hey,
it.
John, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks to our buddy Jon Ryan for joining us live from California, getting set for 2 Monday night games. Always love talking football with him. It's Kicking It with Jon Ryan, a regular weekly segment we're having here. If you want to sponsor that segment, hit me up. I'll be happy to attach a sponsor name to the only Saskatchewan kid that won a Super Bowl. Jon Ryan, longtime CFL and NFL punter, former Rider season ticket holder, former Ram player, Sheldon Williams Spartan. Hot off the presses from Keith Willoughby, the dean at the Edwards School of Business, our dean on the show. Computer simulation is projecting the Riders finish third in the West with an 8-9-1 record. That's what, actually, he predicted 9-8-1. I said it'd be 8-9-1. They're projected to play BC in the West semifinal. 10% probability, the computer's saying, the Riders win the Grey Cup. 50% probability to host a home playoff game, which is up a bit from, I think, 30% a week ago. 94% probability to make the playoffs. I think if the Riders beat Calgary, which they should here, and Ottawa coming up Saturday, then they'll be in, and they should do that too. The computer, though, really loves the Blue Bombers since they're fresh off a convincing road win at the hot Elkamos team, giving them a 54% probability to win the Grey Cup. Computers making Saskatchewan an 11-point favorite over Ottawa on Saturday. And get this, there were 17 cases out of a 100,000 computer simulations in which the Riders earned a crossover berth in the Eastern Division and qualified to play the Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup in Winnipeg. Wow, that would be, as Ed Whalen used to say, the former Saskatchewanian, a ring-a-ding-dong dandy. Also, I saw something cool today. Now, listen, Johnny and Matthew Goudreau passing away when they were hit by that drunk driver is not cool. But their dad, is it Guy Goudreau or Guy Goudreau? He was invited out to Philadelphia Flyers practice today by John Tortorella. I love Torts. Torts invited him out. He came out, helped them run the practice, and they're going to do that again a couple more times during the year. He said, I can't bring back his sons. I didn't even meet his sons, actually, to be honest, is what Tortorella said. But he lives in the area, and we're trying to do our best to help him not move on with his life, but maybe best deal with his life, because hockey was so ingrained in that family. So kudos to John Tortorella, who can be surly with us media types, but generally a pretty good dude, and I like the cut of his jib. So a good job on John, and nice to see Guy Goudreau, or Guy Goudreau, I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyways, Guy Goudreau, go out to the Philadelphia Flyers practice. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk to the outgoing president of Football Canada, Jim Mullen. He's going to join us. He's the general secretary for IFAF, now International, is it Flag Football League? Anyway, I'll get the acronym on that later, but he's the general secretary. We'll talk to him about his great time in Football Canada. He left, but he kind of got pushed. Stupid egos in Football Canada, and they could regret missing out on Jim Mullen. Also on Wednesday, Paul Waldo will join us, the sponsor of this show and 3-time Grey Cup champ. We'll talk about the Huskies, how they're going to try to scramble to get into the Can West playoffs, his thoughts on the CFL, headed down the backstretch here. We're going to hear from Jeremy Roenick. I'll be with Jeremy in Weyburn October 24th. I believe it's the 24th for the dinner with the Weyburn Red Wings, a fundraiser. I'll be on the stage with JR and former Red Wings coach Dwight McMillan. So JR is going to join me on Wednesday. He's going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's outstanding. And we're also going to hear from Kyle McIntyre about the SJHL coming up. Well, the season's already underway. He also is he's the president of the SJHL. He's also a high school football official. So we'll talk to him. And James Gallo, voice of the Moose Jaw Warriors, will join us. We're going to have a loaded show on Wednesday. I may bump one of those to Friday, but definitely lots coming up on tap here on the big show. All right. So let us move on now. We are going to get to my conversation here. We'll, on the other side of the sponsor break, we'll hook up with James Ellingson, the Duke, former receiver with the Riders, now a broadcaster with the Ottawa Redblacks. Let's get the skinny on Ryquell Armstead, who rushed for 207 yards with the Riders against Calgary last week. Why is he in Saskatchewan? Why did they let him go? But I grew up watching you, cheering for number 85, hoping that you could help us win a Western semifinal, which you did. And then we went on to win the Western final and then the Grey Cup in 89. This would be the Duke, James Ellingson. Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be with you. And you know what? I'll never get tired of anybody wanting to talk about the 89 Grey Cup because it is my favorite, fondest football memory for sure.
Yeah, so I've talked to you in another life, but never on this show. That 89 game, you guys were up against it. You had all the injuries and everything like that. And you always hear this in football or any sport, next man up.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I believe, and this is no disrespect to you, sometimes that's easy to say, but the next man up is the next man up because he's not the first man up.
Yeah.
But how did you take it when you came? You were the next man up. Now, I know you had played a role during the year, but you know, you weren't Fairholm, you weren't Elgard, but then you come up and you make the plays when we needed them.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you said that because no one could ever have replaced those two. They were tremendous players. Obviously, I think Ray, slam dunk Hall of Famer, and Jeff maybe was on the cusp of that. And I was just happy to help out, contribute where I could. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I knew that I was good at certain things and wasn't great at other things. Catch the ball, be in the right spot, get the first downs, you know, be a good teammate, try and block and do whatever, and try not to be the weak link when it all was said and done. And I was thankful to get an opportunity in the Grey Cup, especially to make some plays and just be part of the equation in a game. I think that is still the most exciting Grey Cup ever played.
I agree. So I see your hair. I see my hair. I'm a little younger than you, but I wouldn't say by a whole leaps and bounds. So where I'm going with this, James, in all your years watching football in the CFL, can you remember a year like this where we don't have like a juggernaut team? I know Montreal has the record, but let's be honest, the Riders are 6-7-1, and they should have beat Montreal twice. Okay, like there's no dominant team. Do you remember this much parity?
No, and especially I'm sure you guys are talking about it a lot, is the disparity this year with the East and the West, where you've got two teams and maybe three teams that are, you know, record-wise better than everybody in the West, and the West has just been such an interesting, call it a quagmire this year, and I think Winnipeg may be starting to kind of figure things out, but they have so many injuries as well, and I think that's been the other story of this 2024 season is injuries across the board to key players. A lot of quarterbacks haven't been able to play every game, and so yeah, it's been just very, very interesting, and I think it makes it great for the fans heading into the stretch run and the playoffs. There really is nobody that you can hang your hat on.
You know, and I talked to Jon Ryan about this just before you came on. You know, like Bo Levi Mitchell, he's going to get his ass benched for Taylor Powell, and then Powell gets hurt, and that's terrible. But then Bo Levi Mitchell comes back, and he last game, for instance, 31 of 40, 362 yards and a touchdown. If his team had a better record, he could have a serious MOP run right now.
You know, we were talking about this on our pregame show on Saturday before the Montreal game, and I actually made the point that I really can't think of anybody else more deserving at this point in the season than Bo Levi. And it sounds ridiculous for a team that's not in the playoffs and a guy that kind of got off to a bit of a rocky start this season. But tell me if there's anybody else that has played at that level and that would be in a conversation to say, without this guy, we'd be winless, sort of thing, right? So it's a remarkable story, but I don't know how the voters will play that out if the Ticats don't even make the playoffs.
But they're still in the mix, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That speaks to what we were talking about. Let's talk about Ottawa for a second here. They say when you have two quarterbacks, and you would know it with Burgess and Austin, they say when you have two quarterbacks, sometimes you don't have any quarterbacks because it can divide the room. What are we looking at in Ottawa here with Drew Brown and Jeremiah Masoli?
You know, it is interesting. It's a little bit like the Burgess and Austin conversation. And certainly back in that era, we didn't have a divided locker room. We really trusted both guys. They got along pretty well. And of course, everybody wants to play. You know that. And I think Jeremiah has so much respect in the locker room for what he's been through, coming back from those 2 horrific injuries. And he's just such a great teammate. And I think the guys are pulling for him. But I think Drew Brown's come in and done a nice job. He's not as maybe a dynamic a player or a leader that Jeremiah would be. But I think at this point in time, if maybe, and this is one of the questions that has come up already here in Ottawa, is if Drew Brown is healthy on Saturday, who plays? 2 weeks ago, I would have said Drew Brown plays no matter what. Now I'm not so sure. I think Jeremiah might get the nod on Saturday for his experience and to try to kind of right the ship a little bit in Ottawa.
Now you got some injuries on defense. Defense is leaking water a little bit. I mean, when you lose 24-12, that's not terrible. I think offenses. Would you agree with this statement? If an offense can't score 3 touchdowns in the CFL in a game, the way the rules are geared towards the offense, then your offense isn't playing very well. That's how I feel.
100%, and that was example of that on Saturday. Ottawa's defense, even with all those injuries, really I thought played so well enough to win. They only gave up effectively 17 offensive points to Montreal, which is I think less than 3 touchdowns. So yeah, Ottawa's offense absolutely to me was the culprit. They took way too many penalties in key times. 2 interceptions, 1 a pick 6, of course. And at the end of the game, I don't know if you saw the very end, I was mystified by Bob Dice's decision to punt the ball on 3rd and 8, down 12 points with about 3 minutes to go. I mean, I don't know if he had a total lack of confidence in the offense or what was going on there, but you're absolutely right. Ottawa's offense was the reason they didn't have a chance to win that game on Saturday.
Let me bring the NFL and CFL together in this, okay? Because you see calls like that, or at the end of the Rider first half with Calgary, there's 1 second to go. Brett Lothar pooches it high. Fortunately, it stays inbounds, but if it goes out of bounds, Calgary gets off the kickoff. Calgary gets the ball in a favorable position to try a Hail Mary at the end of the half instead of dribbling it down. In the Atlanta-Kansas City game, they got about 5 minutes to go. Raheem Morris doesn't go for a field goal. You're the defensive guy. Trust your defense. And then 4th and inches, they try to. Kansas City is an athletic defense. They can run east and west. You've got a 6'2", 230-pound quarterback. Why are you not just going to take a quarterback sneak and go forward? My question to you is this: you've been on a sideline. Where in the NFL that's egregious because you got about 1 million coaches on the staff that can say. But in this, where's the decision making in the heat of the game with some of these guys?
Oh boy, you and I are on the same page. One of my biggest frustrations in both leagues to me has been coaches who don't seem to understand the situation, the score, and you can point to a million examples of that. Last year when Ottawa played in Regina, you may remember that they were third and goal from the 1, and they kicked a field goal and gave to go up 2, I think it was, and gave Saskatchewan a chance to go down, and which they did, kick a winning field goal at the end. Rather than, even if you don't make it there, you got a minute left, you're on the 1 yard line, you probably get the ball back and still win the game. Anyways, I couldn't agree more. I don't understand why they don't spend more time in practice and meetings and off season, really talking through these scenarios and how to play them out, whether it's third or fourth down gambles, whether it's field goal versus touchdown. I mean, Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia the week before, when he kicked the field goal to go up 6 rather than, going for 2 plays and running them on a clock. And, the list goes on. So you and I are of the same mind.
Yeah, and the Riders, I mean, in this tight quagmire of a West, like using your words, they blew that game against the Argos in Toronto at the end of the game. They mismanaged that so badly. And at the end of the game, they still didn't understand. They're asking Coach Mason. I love Coach Mason, but he still didn't kind of get what they were saying there.
Yeah, the fact that they threw the ball in that situation and didn't run some clock down and get to overtime, it blows my mind. And I do think that coaches need to be held way more accountable for those types of decisions. I always say this about head coaches especially. You shouldn't be coaching during the game in the moment. You need to be 2, 3, 4 plays ahead, scenarios ahead. What happens if we have to get to third down? What happens if the clock is here? What happens if we get a long completion, and we only have 4 seconds left? Like, what are we going to do next? Not what are we going to do now? And I don't think many coaches, they get too much caught up in the moment, in my mind.
Like you, I love the CFL. You played in it. I've been a fan and covered it for 3 decades. But so we'll waste money and time on Global 2.0, which is just it's ridiculous to me. Okay, it's a rule for kickers, take away Canadian kicking jobs, but then we're going to put a cap on the coaching cap. Okay, so I kind of get where a guy will be a DC and a head coach like Mace, or or Dave Dickenson, but I think it's for what you said. I think it's too much. Like, look at Dave Dickenson. He's the GM, coach, and offensive coordinator. Those are 3 full-time jobs. That is ridiculous.
Couldn't agree more. And my big frustration with Paul LaPolice when he was here in Ottawa, exactly that scenario, head coach, offensive coordinator. And I've said this, so like you need to be able to take yourself out of the head coaching role and go sit down and talk to your quarterback when he comes off the field, or talk to some of the receivers, what's working, what's not. You can't do that when you're a head coach. You're just too locked in. I think one of the reasons why Hamilton's improvement has been so quick on defense is that Chris Jones was never meant to be a head coach. He should be a coordinator and always be a coordinator. He's really good at it. He's not good at being a head coach. And when a guy gets one or either of those roles, he can maybe flourish, but not in both.
Yeah, and Jones is showing too with that roster, because they haven't really added a lot in Edmonton since he left. He's a good roster builder.
Right.
He adds chaos because he always wants to tinker with the roster.
Right. And he unfortunately thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. You guys had him in Regina for a number of years as well, so I think you know what I'm talking about.
So, and then the other thing, when you have a dual role, do you not alienate half the team? Like, okay, so you're the DC. And I'm not saying Mace is doing this, but I'll use Corey as an example. So Corey's the head coach and the DC. Don't you alienate half the room? Because say you're in practice and the DC and the defense is doing great and the offense isn't doing great. So you're pumped for the defense, but like the offense feels left out and vice versa.
Bless his heart, because I loved having him as a defensive coordinator when I was in Ottawa. But Dave Ritchie was exactly like that. I never got to play for him when he was also the head coach in Montreal, but in Ottawa, he was almost divisive in his approach, because he was constantly, rah-rah on the defense in practice. Whenever they would beat the offense, and we felt frustrated with him because we felt, hey, you're supposed to coach, you're supposed to be our coach, not just the defensive coach. So I think you're right. It's hard for them to walk the line on both of those things.
Do you think, speaking of quarterback controversy, even though they say there's none, and I don't know if there's a controversy, but adding Nathan Rourke when Vernon Adams was having a great season, an MOP season. Now, I know VA got hurt, but for instance, I'll paint a picture for you. James Ellingson is having an unbelievable year with Vernon Adams quarterbacking for him, okay? Vernon, and Fairholm's having a great year. VA's the quarterback, and then all of a sudden, Ken Austin comes from his NFL thing, or Nathan Rourke comes from his NFL thing in the middle of the season, and he's the guy. How do you? I think it's kind of dented the locker room, even though they won't admit it.
Yeah, the one thing that was so interesting, and I think it maybe helped BC make that decision, was the week before, I believe, when Vernon got hurt. There was the 25-0 embarrassment in Winnipeg, and so maybe you make a case that okay, he started strong, but he hit a brick wall, and now Nathan's coming to rescue everybody. And I thought Rourke would play a lot. I thought he'd kind of get back to that 2023, 2022, whatever year it was that he was.
Yeah, 2022, yeah.
I thought he would get right back to that, just because I think he's just a super talented kid. But I do hear rumblings, and I'm sure you have too, that there was a lot of raised eyebrows in the locker room about why are you bringing him in, paying him what you're paying him, anointing him the head, the first string quarterback, and that Vernon seems to be kind of shuttled to the side, which isn't the first time that's happened to him.
I don't fire anybody on my show because I've never been a coach, but I will say this: if the BC Lions don't get things turned around and do something the way Amar Doman is putting money out in that community, Rick Campbell could be on, he might even be on the hot seat right now. Like, they got to get things going there in BC or down the backstretch here.
Yeah, they built this whole thing, and to your point, right, the Grey Cup's in Vancouver. They got Betts, they signed him, they got Rourke back. Absolutely, the expectations are high. I like Rick Campbell. I've been a big fan of his. I thought he did a great job here in Ottawa, and I don't know what happened with him and Marcel Desjardins when Rick left, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, with those expectations comes the reality that if you can't get it done, your head's the one on the chopping block.
Couple more questions for you. We got a guy named Raquel Armstead who rushed for 207 yards against Calgary. Now, I'll put a disclaimer beside it because the Calgary Stampeders' run defense is horrible, and it was ultra horrible against the Riders, okay? Anytime a guy averages 8.82 yards a carry, wow. I saw Cameron Judge miss tackles. I didn't think it was Cameron Judge. I thought it was maybe Judge Judy out there, the way he was missing tackles. But anyway, so we got Armstead. He gets street cred now in that locker room with 207 yards. But can I ask you a question? Why do we have Armstead? Why is he in Saskatchewan? He was the fourth leading rusher when he left the team in Ottawa.
Yeah, you know what? We didn't ever get the full story, but a lot of off-field stuff, a lot of question marks around how he spoke to coaches from a level of respect, maybe just not being a great teammate. You know, it had to be pretty egregious for them to make this decision because you're right. He was very, very good from the beginning of the season. You may remember he got kicked out of a game against Calgary for unsportsmanlike conduct. That didn't help him. I think he's still a bit immature. I was fascinated by his post-game interview on TV after the game the other night when he basically was, obviously lacking a lot of humility, and I think he's just really an immature kid. But nobody's rushed for 200 yards in the CFL in a long time, and he did it in his first game with Saskatchewan. And he's going to be uber motivated for the revenge tour game on Saturday. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Saskatchewan can. I think every coach, every general manager thinks they can fix those players, and they think they can, provide the structure and the leadership in the locker room to kind of get that guy fixed. And we'll see. But he's a very talented kid.
So yeah, and the thing is, like you said, nobody just rushes for 207 yards, and that's an interesting subplot right there. And if Masoli plays the game where everything started to spiral downhill for him, was in Saskatchewan when Marino hit him, and then of course the injury the next year. So that'll be an interesting subplot. Okay, so the NHL is going to Prime. They got their big global Netflix or Prime series coming out following the NHL players. I'll watch the NFL, man, and I think you'd agree with me. The 3-down game is the best game on the planet.
Yep.
It is the best game on the planet. The NFL, there are a lot of boring throwaway plays. Like the kickoff rule is a joke. They can say whatever they want. The kickoff rules, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Awesome.
It's terrible. Okay. It's like putting an 8-track in a Ferrari. The NFL's is great, but let's put an 8-track in there, right? Okay. That's what everybody thinks. But when you watch an NFL game, there's something about it. It's like, it's the TV production. It's everything. It feels like, it's almost like you can't miss a play, even though it's more boring than the CFL. But I don't feel that way with the CFL. They already got dudes like me and you, guys in our early 60s, late 50s, 50 years old. How do we get the young people turned on here?
I don't know. I mean, I think the thing that the NFL just has going for it, and I hate to say it because it's sad, is the whole gambling fantasy piece, right? Because you've got 32 storylines or 16 storylines every single week. There's so much more that you can kind of sink your teeth into. And I love what the CFL has done with, I'm sure you do too, with the summer, one game a night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's been great. I just think the NFL, it's too sexy for the younger generation to pass up. I just wish that they could. I mean, you've seen many games in Regina where the crowds are, it's 33, 34,000. They're into it. Ottawa the other day, we had 23,500. It was a great atmosphere. Just got to try to make it more of an event. But I just think the NFL just does such a great job of marketing. I wish there was an easy answer, but I think our game is just tremendously exciting, and the athletes are amazing in Canada, and I wish more people could appreciate it.
So do we have problems in Ottawa? Like they got a great loyal fan base for what they've gone through since they went on that little, first year, whatever. Then they went on a nice little, Grey Cup loss, Grey Cup win, but then it's been a dry spell. But they're only averaging, and they've had a great team all year, 17,000, 18,000 until the game you just talked about. Do we have a bit of problems in Ottawa that way?
I think what we have in Ottawa is a bunch of people that are still on the fence about whether the organization is legitimately committed. I think they've gotten a bit of a bad rap over the last couple of years. They have just been excessively bad. It's so putrid that I think people really have kind of walked away and even now aren't convinced that things are fixed. The other thing they struggle with in the East is in the summer is cottage country is what it is. And it's so hard on those Thursday and Friday nights to get people to stay in town to go to the game. Now, to your point, if you're competitive and you're winning, I think that's going to change. But you're right. I've been disappointed this year. Other thing, too, which is just an excuse, is the weather. Almost every game this year, there's been either rain or rain in the forecast, and Ottawa's a bit of a walk-up town. Mm-hmm. All of those things, though, need to be, I think, set aside, and there needs to be a much more level of commitment to the organization and the team in Ottawa.
James, in 1959, the NFL had 12 teams, and the CFL had 9 teams. In 2024, the CFL has 9 teams, and the NFL has 32 teams. I don't expect us to compete. It's apples and oranges, okay? But I've proposed this. Should we look at northern border states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, the places where a lot of our players come from the states, FCS schools? My son just played down there 4 years FCS. I saw it.
Where did he play?
We played North Dakota with the Fighting
Nice.
Hawks. Now he's in Calgary playing with the Dinos just to get used to the CFL or to the Canadian game because he'd like to get drafted. But anyway, I in that conference alone, I saw 4 dome stadiums. Like I know they'd have to reconfigure the field. I know there's the ratio thing, but I think that's what we're lacking. We got to get more teams. We got to have a chance to have more fantasy and a little more betting and a little more storylines like you talked about. And I just don't see an appetite for it here in Canada. Yeah, Atlantic Canada's done now. They're not going there. It's over. To not play a touchdown Atlantic again, to me, that signals we're done. Victoria was nice, but I mean, I don't know that the BC's going to get more than one team. And Quebec, yeah, they're getting Laval's kicking ass with their attendance, but why would they want to go pro and take on those extra expenses? But I know Americans like to spend money. So I don't know what your thoughts on something like that. I've proposed that for a while.
Yeah, well, I played in the era when we had the U.S. expansion, and you remember, I mean, could they have picked more far-flung southern cities than Memphis and Shreveport and Birmingham, Alabama? It was ludicrous. And I said that at the time. Why didn't they look much closer to the Canadian border for all the reasons you said? I think the big sticking point is likely going to be with the CBA and the desire to keep the Canadian ratio. I would be happier if the CFL had, for example, 12 teams and they could find a way around the U.S. labor laws and have fewer Canadians on every team, still have a starting component, but spread those Canadians out over 12 teams. You're going to have more total Canadian players. You're going to fulfill that for most of the Canadian fans who love to see their kids play. And I think you draw the interest from the northern, because they get Canada, right? Weather, or the proximity, 100%. If you could find 2 to 3 cities there that you could fill out and have a 12-team league, I think it would be worth the experiment. Better than the global plan.
Yeah, you got that right. Okay, lastly, James, I'll let you go, and I appreciate your time. So we got the game coming up here in Saskatchewan. Keith Willoughby, who is the dean at the Edwards School of Business in Saskatoon, but the CFL simulations for me with his computer all year, over 100,000 simulations. It's got Riders 11-point favorites over Ottawa in this game. Now, I know the computer just looks at the most recent stuff, and Ottawa's kind of been struggling a bit. So he and I both say, hey, like, we're not buying everything the computer's selling. But what do you think in this game? How do you think this one goes?
Ottawa's got too many injuries in key spots, I think. And I think Saskatchewan seems like they're getting a little healthier. I mean, Trevor Harris also will love to kind of come back and haunt his old team. 11 seems like a lot, but I said on the weekend I can make a case for Ottawa not winning a game the rest of the way in the regular season. You think about it, they go after this, they get the bye, then they play at Toronto, they play at Montreal. Now Montreal may have nothing to play for, so that could be a bit of a wash, and then they're home to Hamilton, and who knows if that game potentially, because they need one of 2 things to happen to clinch a playoff spot in the East: Hamilton to lose or tie, and they need to win or tie a game. But yeah, so all that to say, I think Saskatchewan will win on Saturday, and the Rider fans will go home happy.
James, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Michael.
Always fun talking to the Duke, James Ellingson, Ottawa Redblacks broadcaster, and of course, Rider great. Helped the Rough Riders win the second Grey Cup in team history with a big performance in the West semifinal against Larry Kuharek. Danny Baird and the Calgary Stampeders winning in McMahon Stadium. They'd, of course, go on to win against the juggernaut Eskimos and then win the Grey Cup in Toronto against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. We're going to wrap the show up talking to Regina Victoria's linebacker from the female team, grade 7. She's in the junior program, Eva Montgomery, and we'll talk to her in a second. NFL coming up here tonight, 5:15 or thereabouts. It's the Buffalo Bills hosting the Jacksonville Jags. Buffalo looking to go to 3-0. Jags hoping to avoid an 0-3 start. I smashed the Jags on a parlay. I got the Jags winning, not winning, but covering the 5.5. So I think they might lose a close game there, as I said to Jon Ryan earlier in the show. Then the game starts at 6. It's Cincinnati and Washington. Commanders got some hope on offense with Jaden Daniels. Their secondary's a little suspect. T. Higgins will play for the first time this year. Had a hamstring injury, the old contract hamstring injury, but he's back. Jamar Chase still doesn't have his contract in pocket, but he is playing. And Mike Brown's notoriously the cheapest owner in the NFL. So I think it's going to be a big win. I could pick the Bengals by 10, maybe 2 touchdowns. They're 7-point. So I'm giving the points, 7 points, taking the Bengals. I'm taking money line, Houston Astros over Seattle in a key AL. Is that West? Yeah, AL West matchup. And the other game I had got San Francisco knocking off Arizona. Maybe I'm kind of wishful thinking there because I'm a Padres fan and Arizona's in the second wild card spot, but I want to pick an upset today. San Francisco beating Arizona at Chase Field. So that's my parlay today. Let's get to some of these messages here. Got this one from Rob. Armstead looked like Kenton Keith out there when he was playing. Yeah, did you see him carrying that football though in that one play like a bottle of beer or a loaf of bread? Rocky says, he's got a couple here from Rocky. He says, yeah, best game ever is the CFL. I love it, Ballsy. And I've been saying this forever. It's gambling and money that make the young kids addicted to the NFL. Yeah, it is. Fantasy, gambling, all of that stuff. And Gordon Sands, hey, from Scotland. Hope you both had a blessed day. I think he was talking when Jon Ryan was on with me. Or maybe it was our friend there, James Ellingson. The Duke. Maybe it was the Duke. Scotland. That's probably what it was. The Duke. Got tied into royalty there. Gordon, thanks for checking us out. We appreciate it. Yes, and a few people have been asking me, when are we getting those shirts, Ballsy? Just working it into my budget here. I should have the shirts by October 1st. We'll get the shirts done. Maybe second week in October, depending on how it's backed up at the shirt place. But yeah, we're going to do the shirts. Sponsored by Hammer Time Roofing. The Our Balls Are Bigger shirts. Because that's our post-game show after every Rider game, after the playoff games, and after the Grey Cup, right through the end of the year. It's the Our Balls Are Bigger post-game show. This is Ballsy Uncut, 3 times a week, starting at 4 o'clock Saskatchewan time, and then available later where you get your podcast. We're going to wrap the show up now after a sponsor break with Eva Montgomery, linebacker, grade 7 at WF Ready School. She's playing linebacker for the Regina Vics, who lost their game to Yorkton here, their first game. All right, folks, say hi to Eva Montgomery. She is a football player, flag and tackle. Welcome to the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you're playing a flag football. Is it competitive? Is it the fall league? Do you play in the spring and the fall?
You can play in the spring and the fall. I choose to play in the fall because that's football season. But yeah.
And what team are you?
This year I am on the Falcons.
Nice, actually. And the Falcons played Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs. Do you like NFL, CFL? Do you like one over the other?
No, I like watching all football. I don't really have a preference.
Okay. And on flag, are you quarterback or are you just one of the receivers? Are you the center? What do you do?
I'm better on defense, so I'm normally a defensive player on flag.
Yeah. And you're playing for the Vics in tackle football. You guys played York in your first game. How did that go?
It went okay. We did lose, but I feel like our team did do a good job. So.
Mm-hmm. Was that in Regina or was that in Yorkton?
That was in Regina. We played at Libel.
Okay, cool. How many years have you been playing tackle football for now?
This is my first year playing tackle.
Oh, wow. Cool. So what made you decide to get into tackle football?
I've always been around tackle football. My mom played for the Regina Riot, and my dad used to coach football. So I've always been on the sidelines, and I've always been watching. And this year I was old enough to play, so I thought I'd give it a try.
Yeah, and you're playing linebacker. What do you like about playing linebacker? And you said you played defense in flag football, so you love defense.
I do.
I guess that's the first question, Eva. What do you like best about playing defense?
For tackle, I mean the tackling part, that's pretty fun. And it's just you can't really do much wrong on tackle. You kind of just have one job, and it's to stop the ball, which is pretty easy. So yeah.
Put your camera up a little bit so we can see your smiley face there. A little bit higher, a little bit higher. There he goes. Right there. Hold it there. Okay. So so you like being the hammer and not the nail, so to speak. You want to smoke the person instead of getting smoked.
Yeah.
What's it feel like? You're playing football, your first tackle football game, coming down and making a tackle. What does that feel like?
It felt really good. Like before the game, I was really nervous, but as soon as I made the first tackle, like all the anxiety went away. It was awesome.
Do you have a lot of friends on the Vicks team?
I do. I have made lots of friends on the team.
And what's your favorite thing about football, whether it's flag or whether it's tackle? Is it the friends? Is it competing together with friends wearing the same jersey?
Yeah, I think it's just competing in general, because any team really, when you make friends and stuff and team bonding is just, that's always going to be my favorite. And just the sport in general is really cool.
So I played way back in the day, and I have bad eyes, so I never had contacts. I wore rec specs, like the sports glasses. I see you wear glasses. Do you wear contacts when you play?
No, I just wear my glasses and hope they don't break, basically.
Really? Do you put a strap on the back?
Nope, I put my helmet on, and then I put my glasses on, and just kind of hope for the best.
Well, you're old school. I love it. Did it fog up a little bit or anything like that when you're sweating and everything?
No, not really.
No? Okay, so your dad was Warren, and he passed away during COVID. So I'm wondering, when you're playing football today, tackle football, your dad would have been proud of you. He is proud of you, you know, watching down from the heavens, the big football field in the sky. But I wonder, did you think about him today when in this first game when you got out there and played?
Oh, all the time. When I first joined, I kind of like automatically thought of him. I was like, oh, I wonder if like he thinks this is good. I always think of that. And even because he used to coach on Liable, and be like, wow, like I'm literally where he was. I think of it all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome. He was a good guy. I knew him well. So tell me about your, does your mom critique your play? Did she have anything to say about your play after the game?
She always has stuff to say. She always tries to help, and I always take her advice. She's played football longer than I have, so I always try to take my advice on everything. So
you like all types of football. Do you have a favorite player you watch in the CFL or the NFL or anything like that?
Not really.
No? Not, you just watch to watch, right?
Yeah.
Who's your next game against?
Yorkton. So for tackle, it's for Yorkton, and for flag, I would have to check. I don't know yet.
Okay. How many girls tackle teams are there? You have to bring me up to speed. There's the Vicks, there's the Yorkton team. Do you have some other teams that are in the league?
So for tackle, since I'm on the junior team, I play on 6-on-6, and the only other 6-on-6 team is Yorkton.
Okay.
And then for flag, there is a couple of other all-girls teams that we played. This morning, I played against the Giants. So, yeah.
That's cool. You get to keep your jerseys, right?
Yes.
So how many different jerseys? You said you're the Falcons. What other jerseys have you kept? Meaning, what other teams have you played on?
I have a Buccaneers jersey. I have a Bears jersey. And I think a Browns jersey.
So which of those jerseys do you like the best?
I like the Buccaneers ones the best. I think that's the nicest looking one that I've gotten.
Is the Falcons one black or is it red?
The Falcons one is black and red. So is the Buccaneers.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for taking time. I appreciate it. It's great to see that another great young female athletes coming up in the game of football will follow your career. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.